Hello my friends and welcome back to my channel. Okay, so today, here's Kazi. He wants to say hello to me because he doesn't know you're here. If he did, if he knew you were here, he would want to say hello to you too, huh? Okay, welcome back to my channel. Today I have a recommendation video for you with some of my favorite standalone romances. I often get requests for standalone romance recommendations, and it's always hard because undoubtedly some of my most favorite romances are parts of a series, but I do have some standalones that really stand out and that I just really love and I think are wonderful romances, so that's what we're going to be talking about today. So the first book that I want to talk about is Don't Kiss the Bride by Carrie Ann Cole. This is definitely a more popular book. This is an age gap romance, and it does have a younger heroine, which typically doesn't work for me. She is still in high school in this book, but she's 18. And I think that because of her life circumstances, she definitely feels very mature. And like, truthfully, I hate it when people say that because that's something that is going to be subjective, that everybody is going to feel differently about. But I truly feel like when you read her story, what's happened with her mom, the living conditions that she's in, you may think that she feels mature for her age too. But I love this book so much. I thought it was so romantic and so sweet. And this is also a modern day marriage of convenience, which again, hardly ever happens. And if it does, it's like Mafia or something like that. But this is just contemporary and it was just perfect. Okay, I had to look it up. The heroine's name is Skylar. Truthfully, I look up information before I do these videos, but like y'all, I have said it before and you keep, not you personally, whoever's watching this, but there are certain people who watch my videos who continuously remark on the mistakes that I make when I'm speaking, and I just have to say, like, y'all, I'm sorry. I don't mean to just be a blithering idiot up here, but just, I'm not in charge of my brain, and sometimes my mind just goes blank when I'm in front of the camera and I say things and I'm like, why did I say that? So those of you who don't comment, like, I'm not saying don't comment if I make mistakes, but okay, anyways, let's get back to the books. I love y'all. Thank you so much for watching. So Skylar is our heroine. She's a young woman. She lives in a home situation that is not safe, that has allowed her to develop these tendencies which are a little bit off, that sort of help her to feel safe in an environment that is not. She's very embarrassed of her home life because her mother is a hoarder, and she ends up meeting this construction worker named Lucky, or Jude, and he is an older man than her. I actually was trying to think of the age gap specifically, and I'm not entirely sure, but it's not 20 years for sure. I think it might be like 12. I don't know exactly. I'm so sorry. I'm like self-conscious now. Anyway, they meet and they become friends, you know, like Jude starts looking after her in a way that isn't brotherly, but like he feels this sense of wanting to take care of her. He is a very sweet hero in that way. He is not necessarily like a dominant hero as in like an alpha hole, but he's a take charge type of man who wants to take care of her, wants to protect her, and wants to get her out of this terrible living situation once he finds out what it is like where she's living. So in order for him to do that, he proposes that they have this marriage of convenience so that he could legally take care of her and, you know, there wouldn't be any problems with that. And so she moves into his house, and it truly is a marriage of convenience. They have an attraction, but there is that barrier, that taboo-ness of it where, you know, he's like, she's still in high school and she's so much younger than me. And that's a big theme that he has, where he really doubts himself and if he is worthy of her or if it's something that he should do. And she is also very attracted to him. She's a lot more into the relationship than he's sort of held back by that taboo nature a little bit. But it was just so lovely. I think this is just one of the sweetest romances, and I think that's an interesting thing about this book because it is taboo in nature and it is also emotional with what the heroine has to go through. The hero has some of his own baggage, but it's also a very sweet, slow-building romance, and I just love it. I love this book so much. I think it's fantastic. Okay, the next book that I want to talk about is Forever Right Now by Emma Scott. So Emma Scott has quite a few standalone romances actually, which I think is really, really nice. She also has some that are like duets, duology, parts of a series. But this one I read earlier this year and absolutely loved it. It's called Forever Right Now. It's a single dad romance, and our hero's name is Sawyer, and he is going to law school. He wants to be a lawyer, and he's in this phase of life where he's definitely like a party boy, where he goes to parties and he sleeps with all these women and all this other stuff. So he's actually at a party or maybe the party is at his house. That's probably more likely what happened. And a young woman that he had a one-night stand with or a fling with shows up with a baby, and he's like, what? And she's like, oh, this is your baby. I just wanted you to come and meet your baby. And then she sort of says, I'm going to go to the bathroom, but of course she leaves, just dumps the baby with him. And Sawyer, being just this wonderful stand-up guy, decides he's going to, he's going to raise his baby. He's going to love her and raise her, and he is just the best single dad. Like, there's a scene in here where he's at the grocery store trying to make sure that he gets, like, organic fruits and vegetables to make her baby food, and it's just, like, the sweetest thing. And the heroine in this book is a very interesting, complicated heroine. Her name is Darlene. She is a dancer, or a former dancer, and her career kind of ended short quickly because she ended up getting involved in drugs, and with the law, she has some issues with the law. So she has to go to these basically like AA meetings for drug addicts, and she's on probation, and she decides to move to San Francisco to try and get her life back on track and see if she can make a career as a dancer for herself now. Like, not an exotic dancer, but like a performing dancer in that way. And so she does that, and she ends up finding this apartment to sublet in this complex where Sawyer lives, and that's how they end up meeting. It's very sweet. This romance is very sweet. And I think that if you know Emma Scott, you know that she's usually another hard-hitting, emotional romance writer. This one has those elements, but it feels lighter than books I've read from her in the past, in that it still has those hard-hitting emotional moments, but the, like, severity of them is balanced very well with the lightheartedness and the happily ever after. And I just love this book so much, and I thought it was amazing. So, now, of course, one of my all-time favorite standalone romances, this next one, is one I could not do a video and not mention, and it is Indigo by Beverly Jenkins. If you have been on the fence about reading historical romance and you're not sure where to start, I would highly, highly recommend Indigo. It's a very beginner-friendly to historical romance. It is sweepingly romantic. It is so beautifully historic. It has such a great sense of character, and I feel like it's just really an important novel that if you are a romance reader and you have any interest at all in historical romance, I would highly recommend this if you haven't read it yet. So this is basically the romance of Galen and Hester. Galen is also known as the Black Daniel. He's a very powerful man, and he is, I believe, is he a Frenchman? Or there's some, like, he has a French accent. I'm not entirely sure. I can't remember his exact heritage there. But he is also a black man who is helping to free enslaved people so that they no longer are slaves. And he does that through the Underground Railroad, which Hester is also helping to help these people receive their freedom finally. Even people who have technically been freed, but they're unable to actually live free, she is helping them do that. So one night they end up meeting because Galen is injured, and Hester ends up having to help him, nurse him back to health, and it's just truly so beautiful. Like, probably my favorite parts of this book are the sickbed scene when she's taking care of Galen. That's when they fall in love. But once he's healed and recovered and he gets to go back to his normal life, he can't stop thinking about her, and so he finds these reasons to come back into her life, and it's just so beautiful. I love this book so much. I've read it 3 times, and I sort of feel like, now that I'm talking about it, I'm like, I want to read it again. And my copy is the independently published copy, which I can't find, and I'm like, where is it? But I would probably sell my right leg for this cover because I love this book so much, so it's amazing. Okay, the next book that I want to talk about is also a historical romance, and I feel like historical romances are kind of hard to come by that are standalones, but this one is Heart in the Highlands. I read this book earlier this year. This is a new to me author, and I loved it so much. This had a lot of emotional weight to it, and this had a hero who really has to work through the wrongdoings that he did to earn her forgiveness. So essentially it's a grovel, but there aren't necessarily any book fell. Huge groveling grand gestures in here. It's more just like this man very quietly but steadfastly works to earn her love back when she so freely gave it to him. So the hero is going to be the Duke, and his father is adamant that he marries, and he wants to have this arranged marriage. He's actually I think he's a Scots. I mean, it's in the Highlands, so somehow he's Scottish in some regard. And his father wants him to marry this English woman, Lady Catherine. So, you know, the hero at first is initially like, he doesn't really want to marry her. He's not super interested in that. But then when he meets her, and he is so taken with like her warmth and her kindness and this sort of quiet beauty that she has about her, that he's like, you know what, maybe this won't be so bad. So they end up having this really beautiful wedding night, and it was so lovely and so romantic, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so sweet, this is working out so good, and where's the conflict gonna come in, you know? That night, their wedding night, the hero ends up overhearing his father, or he ends up realizing that his father actually deceived him, and that's how this marriage came to be. It was all this deception that hurts the hero very much, and so he decides, you know what, I'm not going to give you an heir, I'm not going to have anything to do with this marriage, we're going to be married in name only, but I'm not going to give you an heir. And so he abandons this wife that he felt this tender connection with and leaves for 4 years. 4 years pass, and he decides, you know, you'll have to read the book to find out why, that he wants to try and be a part of his wife's life again and their child. So, you know, this book definitely has some emotional, painful moments with the characters doing things that you don't like, but watching the journey of the hero seeking forgiveness and seeking to make things right and trying to prove to her that he will be a good man and a good husband, and watching her be so reluctant at first and so hurt, but to very slowly open up to this man who she wanted to love, who she hoped to love, who she started to love on their wedding night, was just so beautiful. I just loved it. This is a very slow-moving book, so if you're looking for a lot of action, you're not going to get that here. This is very character and relationship-driven, and those are my favorite types of books. So I loved it so much. It's beautifully written, and just a lovely, charming, sweet story that has a lot about like redemption and making mistakes in our life and trying to work through them and regain the love that we feel like we've lost by our bad behavior. And that's something that I come back to again and again. I just love it so much. Okay, the next book that I want to recommend is Intrigue Me by Grace Draven. This is a book I read very early on this year. I think I read it in January, and it still remains one of my favorite books of the year. Grace Draven is one of my favorite authors. I love her so much, and this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. This is about our heroine Louvain and our hero Ballard. Ballard is, I think he's like, okay, he's the warlord, and he's been cursed, and this curse is, you know, it's changed the way he looks. He's a beast now. It's slowly going to put him into madness, him and his son, and Ballard at this point has given up all hope that they're going to find a way to break this curse, when suddenly his son brings this young woman in who he is sure is going to be the one who breaks the curse for them. But this young woman's older sister, Louvain, is, you know, she's not going to let her younger sister go to this castle and just be taken advantage of, and she's definitely like skeptical, a little bit thorny, a little bit bristly, and it is the love story between the older sister, Louvain, and the dad, Ballard, and it was just beautiful. So she's a little bit of an older woman, and she's very strong, she knows what she wants, she knows what she's worth, and she doesn't like bow down to the hero at all, and he is just so taken with her. Their romance felt very adult. This definitely has a sophisticated feel to it, which I love so much, and I just felt like it was deeply emotional. The fantasy world was fantastic, but the romance in here was absolutely stunning. This is probably my favorite Grace Draven book. I adored it so freaking much, and I think everybody should read it. If you've been wanting to try her, but you're not sure where to start, I think this would be a great place to start, because it's just a beautiful romantic book. And if you like Beauty and the Beast retellings, I mean, you can't go wrong here. Okay, the next book that I have is Love at First by Kate Claiborne. This is a very sweet, cozy, I think low angst in a way type of romance, and I just love it so much. It's a contemporary romance, and it is about our hero, Will, who 16 years earlier, Will is a doctor now, 16 years earlier, when he was visiting, you know, with his mother, his grandfather's apartment, he ends up meeting the girl of his dreams, who's this little girl who's a little feisty. You know, he hears her voice and he's just like so taken with her, you know. Years and years pass, and he kind of forgets about her, but he doesn't really. And then he ends up inheriting this apartment building from his grandfather, and his plan is to just go fix it up, flip it, and sell it and get it off his hands, because he didn't have a good relationship with his grandfather and all that other stuff. So the heroine, what's her name? Nora. Nora also lived there with her grandmother, and her grandmother has passed away, and she is now trying to salvage this apartment so that it doesn't get sold, because she has this found family with all the people who live in the apartment, and they're mostly older people, and she doesn't want anything to happen to them. She doesn't want them to lose their homes. So she kind of starts to try and sabotage Will as he's trying to fix this place up and sell it. And in doing so, they reconnect a little bit and they fall in love, and it's just beautiful. This was heartwarming, cheerful, cozy. If you're looking for like a pick-me-up with a great found family, like, and a very sweet romance that is also a little bit hot, like, I would recommend this one for sure. Okay, and the last book that I have to recommend is, of course, Finding Gene Kelly by Tori Jean. I talked about this a lot recently, but it's one of my favorite books. I love it so much. The heroine has endometriosis. She's living in Paris. She's a travel blogger and a recipe creator. She loves baking. She's really struggling internally with sense of value and what is she going to do with her life, because endometriosis has affected her so deeply. And she ends up reigniting this crush with her sort of childhood sweetheart turned enemy named Liam Kelly. Liam travels to Paris for work, and he secretly has carried a torch for Evie this whole entire time, and they reconnect. It takes her a little while to trust him, but it is the sweetest romance, and this man literally would do anything for her. I loved it so much. I thought it was just fantastic. So there you have it. Those are the books that I would recommend for standalone romances. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you want to leave me an emoji letting me know you were here, please leave me any color of heart. And I'll see y'all in my next video.